Hey everybody, it's Toppen here, and I've got NextWar Vietnam on my virtual table using the Vassal module to show off the game. Played through a couple turns a couple weeks ago, and just to refamiliarize myself with the system, the nuances of the new entry in the series, thought I could do a better job setting up with Vietnam than I did before. I felt like the Chinese did a little too good in my initial game, but the outcome of this turn here, would seem to give the lie to that statement. Chinese did very, very well in the opening turn. I tried a few different things. The military regional forces I arranged a little bit differently this time. Felt that I had them too far forward and they could be too easily cut up in the initial rushes. So I set them back a little bit, but that didn't seem to help in the Red River entry area. And so despite the river crossing here, the Chinese were able to get across the river pretty quickly and badly maul the 2nd Military Region units. HQ and one infantry division managed to escape being caught, and they're situated down here in the southern end, not really doing a whole lot of good, trying to put them in a place where they can at least threaten the flank here of the 75th Army that the Chinese have moving up the Red River Valley. They're straddling the river. They've got a HQ bridge positioned here, which keeps their whole army, or corps, really, in supply. The big thing was the airborne drop. Did a paradrop near Yenbai, and it was successful hugely. And despite the airdrop, and despite drawing a level 6 clearing chit for Yenbai, and the fact that there's multiple facilities there that have to be cleared, they rolled really well. They rolled a 9. You can't roll any better than that. So there you go. They cleared Yenbai in one turn. And so now they have an air bridge head in addition, and they're in striking range of Hanoi already. So had to peel off some guys from 1st Corps to come and deal with that, which is unfortunate because the breakthrough battles along the coast went better than expected as well. And so the Vietnamese are back on their heels. 1st Corps and 2nd Corps took some lumps this last turn. Some good missile strikes, air strikes. Chinese had everything working on turn 1. Working really well. They did lose, I think, one soft team, but they got that back. Special Operations Forces team. They got a Special Ops team back this turn, for this turn from a replacement. I used them pretty aggressively in the opening sequence. The Vietnamese have shot all their Scuds. The Chinese, meanwhile, have 26 missile points, ballistic missiles, and 15 cruise missiles. Little careful with the cruise missiles just because they're very useful to keep the U.S. Navy at bay. So I don't want to go, blowing through those really fast. So that's why I've not spent them as aggressively as another player might think to do. So if I take away the units here and to show you what they control, they took a number of towns, airfields. They did not clear Kempha, the naval port there, but they did take the town. And so they got Dongdang, what's that other one? Langson, Hagyang. I'm not going to say all these names. You can see where the flags are. There they are. One city, one airfield. That's the big score right there at Yenbai. Gives them a good bridgehead over the Red River, so they can pull that HQ bridge right now. The thing I think I need to backtrack before I start to turn and roll weather and stuff. I need to check and see what I need to do to create some more mobile supply units, because I initially posted a depot up here because I initially intended to see if I couldn't break through the mountains, and I realized just how impractical that was. And so we decided to use the river crossing instead. But I kept that there so I could keep the mountain division posted right on the border in an effort to keep the Vietnamese honest up here in the north. And so I still need to bring that mobile supply unit down. I might need to create a whole new depot at some point. The Vietnamese did bomb the one of the bridges here. No, actually, I think it was a soft team that hit the bridge. If they can cut that bridge, then that creates a major problem, supply problem for the Chinese. But then with the air base here, that problem becomes much less severe as they can airlift supplies in through Yenbai. So that's the overall score on the operational map. They're within striking range of Haiphong. Fresh army is going to be coming into play, corps really. And so what I'll probably end up doing is taking the units here from the 74th Chinese Army, just kind of getting them out of the way, consolidate kind of in this area, and keep pressure here on Dongbi. Halong, we hopefully take Halong this turn, and Yongbi. We can get to the outskirts of Haiphong right away. That I think that goes a long way towards securing a victory. Early victory is the name of the game for the non-allies. Meanwhile, I can take the 82nd Army and just roll them as fast as possible down this road that's getting cleared open. It's tougher sledding here for the 83rd Army, as they do have to watch the military reserve units here up on the northern corner of the map. But it took them multiple efforts to clear and force the Second Corps out of Dongdang and Langsong. But now that that's happened and these guys have kind of been rocked back on their heels a little bit, the way is open for this fresh army to come on the scene and do some damage. Probably take some of the attack choppers and move them up to this airfield. Let's go to the ops map here, or strategic map rather, and look at the situation here. As far as the naval situation goes, we're only going to pay attention really to this area of the map. The other areas are not really all that important. In this particular scenario, we're not using a wider war scenario. The Chinese were able to secure control of the South China Sea, as well as the inshore boxes, Gulf of Tonkin, and the Tonkin inshore box, as well as the Spratly Islands area. The U.S. Navy came out to play, so hopefully for the Allies, they'll be able to reduce that back, or at least maybe roll it back to contested at the very minimum, and then start putting some pressure on the South China Sea. I haven't rolled out what's going to happen with the Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, because there is a landing here on the Paracels, but they were unable to clear it, and that might be that's a tricky one to clear. You need a 789 to clear that. Actually, they'll get a +1 because they're mechanized. So 40% chance of clearing every turn, but once that's cleared, that's 5 points a turn rolling that out. The U.S. is at level 2, so they don't have any Marines to play with, and so that'll be the case. The Chinese are trying to keep a limited war with the United States, and without having the Philippines on board or Thailand on board at the game start, the U.S. Air Force opted to send their air units from Japan to the Republic of Vietnam, and so they are going to be in position, but they can't play this turn. So it's really kind of, I don't know, I think it's kind of silly to go through the whole mechanics on turn one of, pulling out half of the units in Japan, air units in Japan, and putting them in the flown box. It's completely meaningless. You can't do anything with the Japanese-based U.S. Air Force units on turn one. They can't fly any missions from there. Not because they're out of range, but because they're not allowed to fly any missions from Japan. So I fail to see the whole point of that exercise. It's a useless thing to do, because at the end of the turn, they're all going to become ready, and then you're going to rebase them somewhere, and then they're going to all become flown. So you really can't use the U.S. Air Force to till turn 3. So the goal of the Chinese really is to beat the snot out of Vietnam on turns 1 and 2, and hopefully you can get an auto victory roll before the U.S. Air Force even gets a chance to play. That's really what you're trying to do. And the Vietnamese Air Force really doesn't have much left to play with. They've got a couple Su-27s and Su-30s, a couple Su-22s, which I forgot to consolidate. So let me reinforce that guy. Boom. We'll eliminate this one. Okay, so the Vietnamese Air Force has a collective, they have 4 air units to play with on this turn. The B-2s and the B-1s flew at great risk on turn 1 and got away with it. Kind of feel like I dodged a bullet with the B-1s, but they got through, and they caused some damage. I think they took out a PRC naval base, but the B-2s won't get to fly again until turn 3. So the goal really now is just hope that the PRC can't get enough points to get an auto victory before the U.S. Air Force gets a chance to at least flex its muscles. U.S. Navy does have their F-18s, but the F-35s got aborted on turn 1. They got in a dogfight. Not a good dogfighting aircraft. They did some damage to the Chinese in standoff and extended range, but in a dogfight, they didn't do so well. So that confirms all our suspicions about the F-35. But we still do have some strike aircraft that might be able to run a couple risky strikes from the Spratlys and maybe take care of some business against the at least the air defense track or maybe a high potential target on the ops map. But aside from that, there's not a lot that the Allies can do in the air. The Chinese in the air, as you can see, there's quite a lot of guys in the flown box. That's because they got aborted on turn one. You see a lot of damaged units here from attacks on air bases with missiles. They took some collateral damage from that and chose to take that on their J7s primarily. But they still have some heavy hitters, lots of J11s and J10s left to play with. They got one more of their stealth J20s to go. The other one was destroyed by the F-35. So that was kind of a cool fight. They rolled a big fat 0 and took them out. So yeah, the Chinese Air Force does have some strength here. Let's look at the overall situation on the scoreboard. The Chinese ended turn one with a grand total of 55 points. Now, of that, 27 points were scored in taking locations, killing stuff, blowing up installations, that sort of thing. So lots of points from that. And the other points are from optional rules, the F-35s, for example, U.S. coming in at level 2. So all the points that the Allies chose to start, giving themselves a little bit of an advantage with, those translate into VP points. But if this thing gets up past 70, if the differential gets past 70, then that's going to be a problem. And really the differential is 4 less than this. So they got actually 51-point advantage. So they're 20 points away from being able to roll for an auto victory. That's how serious things are. So we're going to have to be aggressive with the soft teams, and maybe we can get lucky and take out an HQ, pull up some points with that. The 83rd Army, Chinese Army HQ is reduced, and that could be that's a good source of points right there. Taking out that bridge can create some supply difficulties. Maybe take out the Enbai Air Base. There's lots of options for the Allies. It's going to get harder on the Chinese as time goes on because you start getting these regional popular forces on the map, and you're not even dealing with the efforts of clearing Hanoi. Clearing Hanoi is going to be a real pain. And I think, yeah, actually, now that I think about it, you have to control an urban hex of Hanoi to roll for the auto victory. So that's probably not going to happen this turn. So breathe a little bit easier there, Allies. I think the U.S. Air Force will come into play. I think it'd be a miracle for China to break through all of this and clear a hex in Hanoi that soon. So the back door is open, mind you. There's an HQ guarding this hex, but there's not a lot in the way of reserves right now. So conceivably, the airborne boys could make a play at that, but clearing a hex of Hanoi is going to be a problem. That's a challenge. It's already there's a -1 modifier to any kind of clearing attempt in Vietnam. So it's by definition harder to clear in Vietnam than in other locations, and then urban hexes are always the hardest to clear. So that's the situation after one turn. Definitely a cool game. I like the entry. This one feels, I don't know, somewhere between the Taiwan game and the Korea game. It's not as big as the Korea game. It's a 1-mapper, 2 maps if you include the strategic display. So it kind of feels like the Korean game because it is a big land battle. But you got the whole naval component going on, which is more than just a sideshow. It really is an important thing going on there. The Chinese can rack up a lot of points there, but they can also bring a lot of hurt on them as they could end up widening the war. And so we'll just have to see how that ends up playing out. But in terms of like sheer complexity, I feel like this one's probably easier to jump into maybe than Taiwan. I still think Taiwan might be the most challenging because you got a lot to manage in terms of the naval game isn't a sideshow. It's everything. If you can't control the seas, you can't supply your offensive on this island. And so I think that one's still probably the most complex. Korea is still the biggest. India and Pakistan is still, I think, the easiest one to go with. This one and Poland, I think, are probably in a similar par in terms of accessibility, complexity of the overall situation. Don't feel like there's as many special rules with Vietnam as with Poland. So that's the score. That's the situation. This is Next War Vietnam, and I'll keep you apprised of the situation. Do a couple more videos on this as we play this thing out.